Everyone, Pat Beliveau here. It is, what is today? The 21st of June, 2020. Sunday evening. Um, for this video, again, going by, there's some topics and things that people have asked me in the past that I've been asked, like on interviews or clinics or lessons or whatever I've done, where people have asked me certain things. And one of the things that I've been asked is, who are some of the well-known people you've played with? You know, I get those, especially when I'm, if I'm at like somebody's house or a party or something like that. Who's the most famous person you played with? Which I don't know. I mean, I guess it depends on what they classify as famous and all that kind of, well, whatever. I mean, it is what it is. And a lot of times I get asked after that, so how did you score these high profile gigs? So I don't know. I'm trying to keep this video at around 20 minutes. I mean, I could probably go on for about a half hour, 45 minutes on this, which I don't want to do. But um, so, somebody asks me that at a party or hanging out somewhere or whatever, hanging at a friend's place or whatever, and they say, "Well, would I know anybody that you've played with?" And I go, "Well, it depends on what you listen to and who you're into." I mean, all the gigs that I've done. See, for me, I don't like. I love playing jazz and the exploratory nature of that music and the freedom of it. But I also love playing in a great horn section or, as a horn player behind a singer or something like that. So I like being in a bunch of different scenarios. The symphony is another one that is a scenario that I really enjoy playing in, as at a pops concert or like classics or something like that. And I've had the opportunity to do a lot of those over the years as well. But um, so I don't limit the gigs that I like to do to just jazz gigs. Although I've done some really, really cool ones, jazz gigs over the years, and non-jazz gigs too. So just to give you an idea, if some of the people who I've played with, and depending on how old you are and stuff, you may have heard these names, but not maybe. No, I'm not going to recite my bio here. That's not the intent of this video. Nah. If you really need to read my bio, go to my bio page at belltones.ca. That's my website. So, but just to give you a couple of, like, for jazz people, let's say, okay, one of my big mentors and people that I still talk to regularly and hopefully get to play with again real soon is Bobby Shue, for example. I've played with Randy Brecker, Herbie Hancock, of course, Paul Wertico from the Pat Metheny group, the drummer. I brought him up to play on my album. Some of the great Toronto guys, Guido Basso, Rob McConnell himself, Al Kay, who was the lead trombone player, John Johnson, who was the lead alto player for a while. Also, great players like Jeff Jarvis from LA, Mike Tamaro from Pittsburgh, even guys like Dave Koz I've played with, Pat LaBarbera, another one from Toronto, Pete Chrislieb from LA, tenor player. He was great. Bill Watrous, trombonist from LA, and another one. Joe LaBarbera, great drummer, one of the LaBarbera brothers, John, Pat, and Joe. Played with Tony Bennett for quite a while. And let's see who else. I'm not going to bore you with all these names, but just to give you an idea, Sam Noto was another. Well, that was an interesting one. That fiery Sicilian disposition of his, but it was a great experience. Clark Terry was another one, which was a real trip for me because he's one of my favorite trumpet players. So people like that, and then I think non-jazz people. So another one, for example, the New York Voices was another one that I played with the Calgary Philharmonic Orchestra. So non-jazz gigs, Lighthouse was one of my favorite, the Canadian rock band Lighthouse. Wonderful time. God, that was fun with them. Johnny Mathis was another one. The Temptations, 3 times now. David Foster was another one. When he had time off from Bruce Springsteen's E Street Band, Clarence Clemens, his saxophonist, had a group of his own called the Temple of Soul. So I played with Clarence Clemens in the Temple of Soul, one of the loudest gigs I think I've ever done, but in a horn section to back him up. One of the loudest gigs, but man, did they groove. That was awesome. That was fantastic. Joan Rivers was another one. B.J. Thomas I did just before this past Christmas. Colin James. I opened for the Neville Brothers. Just to give you an example of some of the things I got called for, as I mentioned in another video, the 4 gigs that I'm still kicking myself for not being able to do. Gino Vanelli was another one. I would have loved to have done that gig. And the Funk Brothers, the studio band from all those old Motown and R&B, really famous R&B recordings. Yeah, so, I've been lucky to do that, to be able to get calls like that when these people come to town, But the thing about that is that, people say, how do you get these gigs? It's one thing if you've moved to New York and you meet all these people, or LA or Toronto or Chicago or whatever. I've done them all pretty much being based here, but it doesn't mean that the contacts I've made are outside of Calgary. They are, right? But I've made the effort to go where the people are, right? So, and this is the thing. I've tried to do my best to make the opportunities happen. Now, how did I do that? Well, I go back to that video I talked about where I got called for those 4 tours. Those were significant to me. I've talked about them so much in these video series, but they were extremely significant for me, and they were at a perfect time where I needed to get out of university for a little while and experience real life, not just academia. So they came at a great time. So I was thankful for that. And the way that I ended up getting that done, as I mentioned on one of those videos, is I went to a jazz camp in Washington State, and I met the right guy at the right time. And we talked, and he recommended me for the one tour that he was called to do but couldn't, which was the Victim-owned Diane Carroll tour. So, and not just that, I've also gone to other camps and met people. I've taken lessons with people. I've tried to make as much of an impact in my local area as I can. And that's important. And it's a similar thing with my endorsements too. The 4 that I have, I didn't pick them up. I didn't move to New York and then I got them there, or moved to LA or Toronto, or like I say, Chicago or whatever, and get them there. I got them all here, and no, I'm not a household name when it comes to these companies. Absolutely not. But they, through word of mouth and through reputation, for the most part, some just kind of fell in my lap here, I guess, and I explained that on my endorsement deal video. But especially my first one with Julius Calworth, it was because somebody, like the rep from Western Canada rep at the time, came in from Winnipeg, went to a music store and said, who could I talk to about potentially representing these instruments? My name came up. So don't underestimate trying to make as much of an impression or much of a splash in your local area. And that's the thing. I've never lived in Toronto. I've never lived in New York. I've never lived in LA, Chicago, Vancouver. I've visited those places numerous times. And I've made contacts while being there. This video is almost akin to my importance of networking video. Because the calls that I've gotten for those high profile gigs, the ones that come to town here, like Johnny Mathis, like the Temptations, like Joan Rivers, like Colin James, Gino Vanelli, which I couldn't do, but I did get the call. Stuff like that is because of my network, is the people that I know who have, and I thank them profusely for this, all of you, who had the belief in me to recommend me to do these. And again, too, I've done all of this stuff being based in Calgary. Now, a lot of my American friends don't even know where Calgary is on a map. So if you're wondering, by the way, if you're watching this video, if you can go to Great Falls, Montana and go directly north, then you'll see us. We're like 1.3 million people, kind of in the middle of nowhere. But, that's where it's at. So when I tried to be, like, my goal was to be one of the top call players in my local scene. That's where I started. That's a lofty enough goal. It really is, because that's still years and years and years of preparation and study and going your instrument and learning the craft and all that stuff. I mean, and then you can branch out from there. I didn't want to just be confined to the city limits of Calgary, right? I wanted to be involved. I know one of my goals as a kid, when I started listening to big band jazz, I was introduced to Rob McConnell and the Boss Brass. And I thought, man, I would love to even just sit in on a rehearsal with those guys and get my ass completely kicked around the room. I was living for that. And funny, I look back over the years now, I have shared the stage with a great handful of those guys that played in that band, including Rob himself. So, and that's like, that's a trip for me, that's very trippy, because I would never have seen that coming, but I was just given these opportunities because people put faith in my abilities. But the main thing was that I was getting my proverbial shit together, to be, like I say, to be as top call as possible in my local scene. My goal was to be, when saxophone came up, like in a jazz setting or R&B or horn section or whatever, I wanted to be the guy that was, if not the first name on somebody's mind, I was at least in the top 2 or 3. And that was the goal for me. So, for young players coming up, my suggestion is get together with somebody and study with them as much as you can, but concentrate on what's happening in whatever scene you're in. If you live in Toronto, great. Well, think about breaking into the Toronto scene, Calgary scene, Vancouver scene, Edmonton scene, Winnipeg scene, Halifax, Montreal, whatever, right? See what kind of impact you can make within that area. And that's usually, you'll start to branch out from there. It takes time. It's certainly, I didn't fall off the turnip truck yesterday. Full disclosure, in January, I'll turn 54. So it's not like it's happened overnight. None of that does, right? I mean, this is the other thing. You've got to take time to develop this. You got to develop your network and massage it and increase it, build your network, right? I know that if I was to go pretty much to any city in Canada, I would know somebody there that I can call and say, hey, are you playing anywhere? Where are the places to hang out? Where's a good place to hear live music? And you know what? If I don't know somebody in a certain town, I'm sure I can phone one of my other friends or colleagues and say, hey, who do you know in wherever? Do you know anybody in such and such a town? Who can I contact to find out where the shit's happening, or whatever? And that's important. That's important for that. And, and it's not just that I'm building up my network just so I can have contacts, I mean, that's important, of course. But the people that I know are really good people. They're great people. They're great to hang out with and talk to and all that. So they're likable. I mean, they're mother players, and I look up to them greatly and appreciate their talents immensely. But they're also just great people to hang out with. And I want to surround myself with those kind of people. So again, not to kind of branch out too much into the increasing your network thing, because I've already done that video. But I guess coming back to this, it just kind of emphasizes, in my mind, how important it is to try to build that network and start in your own backyard first, right? But you also have to, you're going to have to take the time and spend the money and do some things to go out and meet people that are outside the confines of your city limits. You're going to have to be the one to make that happen. And those are the things that I've done over the years, going to the Jazz Educators Conferences and to the NAMM show and going to these summer jazz camps and going to New York to take lessons. I had great lessons with Roger Rosenberg, who's Steely Dan's Barry player, who also was the Barry player in Bob Mintzer's band and played with Chet Baker and people like that. And I also took a great lesson with George Coleman, was another one. I mean, to meet these people, to pick their brain, that kind of a thing, and I'm still in contact with Roger regularly. George Coleman, not so much, but I'm still in contact with George regularly. Bob Mintzer, I took lessons with him too for a bit. Not many, I mean, a good handful, I guess, but I'm still in contact with him. And these are guys that I can contact if I have questions about something or I want to get their take on something, which doesn't happen often. I don't want to bug them too much, but the fact that I can pick up my phone, and send Bob an email or give him a call or something like that is pretty cool. I mean, it's like a world-class player like that, or Bobby Shue, another one like I'd mentioned before, someone like that. And these are, and I hold these contacts dear to me, to my chest and to my heart, because like I said, they're not just great players, which they are. They're world-class players, but they're great people. They really take what they do seriously. And that's the kind of vibe I want to be around. So, but a lot of that came from me trying to establish myself on my local scene. So I think that these high profile gigs, if you do the work, it's bound to happen. Something's bound to happen. And I go back to, and I'll maybe end this video on this. I remember seeing a great quote by comedian and actor Steve Martin. And I don't know if it was in context of somebody saying to him, so do you have any words of advice for, somebody breaking into the scene or whatever, trying to break into show business? It might have been that. But the quote anyway is, be so good that they can't ignore you. And I thought that was it seems straightforward, but I thought, I never really thought of that. And I think that's the thing to keep in mind. Stay humble, always. Your ego and anybody else's ego is no bigger than the music. The music is the number one thing. That's the reason we do what we do. We are no bigger than the music. We are the messengers of the music, right? So check the ego at the door. Be an eager learner. Don't think you've arrived. You got the world by the ass. Any of that stuff. There's always somebody out there better than you. There always will be. Come to terms with that right now. Okay? But be true to what you do. Be the best that you can be. And don't worry about what everybody else is doing. If you've got something valid to say musically, then get it out there. Okay? Do that. Right? Within the confines of your own backyard first, expand. If somebody wants a follow-up video to this, I mean, I could talk about this stuff for longer than this, but I can see that I'm now past the 18-minute mark, so I'm going to start wrapping this up. But if there's any other video topics that are spawned from this, contact me, because this kind of stuff, to me, over and above trying to find out what sounds hip over C7, this is real important. It's real important about how you build your network, you meet people, and you build relationships. That's important. Music is a collaborative thing, so we need to work together. We need to know people. We need to, hang out with people and build those relationships and bonds, because then it's like the music is a reflection of that, right? So it's all tied together. Quite honestly, it is. So anyway, remember that quote, that Steve Martin quote, be so good that they can't ignore you. What can you do to get to the point where you'll stand up, whether you're sitting in at a jam or you're playing a gig, and you'll turn somebody's head and go, holy crap, who is that? Who's that guy or who's that gal? Holy crap, do they sound good? Make an impression, right? Let it go from there. Work hard, be true to the music. Don't take shortcuts. Be humble. Do your job, do your work, learn, be expressive. Let the music be the guide. You are no bigger than the music. So put the ego aside and do what you do. If you, like I said, if you have something valid to say, then you need to say it. And that's where the rubber meets the road. Okay? All right. Kind of went in a bit of a direction I didn't expect it to. But anyway, like I said, if there's any follow-up videos, email me. And I'm going to put my email address, as I customarily do, below this, where the little down arrow on the right is. Click on that. You'll see it. youtube@belltones.ca. YOUTUBE at Belltones, BELLTONES.ca. Okay, there you go. Maybe a bit of a soapbox, a bit of a rant, but I don't know. I think this is an important thing. It's, to me, it's an important subject. The networking thing too. And I know I made a video already about it, but as you can see that, networking creeps over and overlaps certain things. So anyway, just wanted to throw that out there. Hope you all are having a great night, and hope you're enjoying these videos. Please send me feedback if you want. You like them, you hate them, they're boring, they're awesome, or whatever, or you have, video topics or comments or questions, whatever. Yeah, so youtube@belltones.ca. Okay, take care. Geez, I'm past 21 minutes. I'm going to shut up now. Okay, good night.